Hey everybody, thanks for joining me for this month's edition of Cook's Corner. This is our last episode for this session, and I hope you have enjoyed some of the recipes. I hope you've tried to make some of them. And I guess I started off with a sweet, and then I made mostly sweets throughout. And then I think I went one day without making a sweet, and now I'm back to sweets because I can't help it. So today we're just going to show you a way to doctor up boxed cake mix. It's really not that difficult to do. It's just a few extra steps, a few extra ingredients, but the product that you make will be like a much moister cake, much tastier cake. So we're going to start with the cake. The cake is super simple. There's no even real steps. Sometimes when you're making cakes, you do the dried ingredients and the wet ingredients. This is just throw it all in a bowl and mix it up. So we're going to take just a boxed spice cake mix. And the reason we're using the spice cake is just so we have a little bit of that pumpkin spice flavor. If you didn't have it, or you just want to go to your pantry and find something, you could use probably like a vanilla cake. Just you want to add like a little extra cinnamon, a little nutmeg, maybe a little clove to kind of give it that pumpkin spice flavor. But I just purchased the spice cake box mix. To this, we're going to add 3 eggs. One cup of just canned pumpkin, and not the pumpkin pie mix, just the canned pumpkin. The pumpkin pie mix already has the flavoring in it, and we're adding the flavor, so we don't want to add too much. We are going to add a half a cup of water, a half a cup of oil. So really, this really isn't that much different from making a box cake. You're doing oil, eggs, a little bit of water, and the cake mix. The only thing we've really added is the pumpkin. So one more thing we're going to add, vanilla instant pudding mix. So you want the instant pudding mix, because we're adding the extra moisture, that pudding is going to kind of help soak up some of that extra moisture, but it's going to make the inside of the cake much more moist than what you would normally get with a regular cake mix. And then we just add a teaspoon of cinnamon. So now we're just going to whip this. We're going to take our mixer and we're going to mix this up for about 5 minutes. You really want to kind of whip this up nice, get a lot of air in there, kind of get nice layers in there. And like I said, it's going to take about 5 minutes, so we'll see you on the other side. Alright, so it's been about 5 minutes. You'll notice that the cake batter is a little bit thicker than how you normally see cake batter, consider cake batter. And that's okay, we just whipped a little bit more air into it. So now we're just going to show you how to put it in the Bundt pan. Okay, so this is all nice and mixed together. I'm just going to kind of go around the bottom and the sides to make sure there's nothing left that didn't get mixed in. That looks good. So now we're going to just put it into our pan. So I'm using a Bundt pan. You don't have to use a Bundt pan if you don't have one. You can just use a regular 13 by 9 baking dish. But just for presentation purposes, I'm going to go ahead and use the Bundt pan today. So if you've never worked with a Bundt pan, things can go wrong. If you don't spray this out right, if you don't get like enough sort of lubrication in here, the bottom will stick, and then when you go to turn it over at the end, when it's all done, it won't come out. And there's probably nothing more terrifying than that moment, because you don't know if it's failed until you've actually done that. So you've gone through the whole thing, and you don't know until you turn that cake over like 3 hours from now whether or not it's coming out. So we'll just show you how to kind of lubricate it, and an extra step you can take to kind of help make a layer in between the pan and batter, so it doesn't want to stick to the pan quite as much. So you just want to take regular vegetable spray. You really want to give a nice coat. Make sure you get the inside. Make sure that it's inside. You can kind of see that little fluting in there. You want to make sure it's all inside there. And then one extra step that I kind of take to help is I put a little bit of flour in here. It doesn't matter if it seems excessive because we're going to dump out any leftover. And just shake it around the whole pan. Kind of up the sides. You don't necessarily need to worry about the top so much. It's just down here on the bottom. You really want to make sure down here on the bottom you're getting enough spray and enough flour. So now I kind of pat the pan until the excess flour comes off, and then I'm just going to get rid of that excess flour and we'll pour it in. Okay, so now you just pour it in here, and when you pour it in, you kind of want to keep it to the side here. You don't want a whole bunch to kind of accumulate on the side here. This needs a way to climb up, and sometimes if you get an excess here, it just makes it a little difficult. So we're just going to kind of go around. Make sure it's kind of level. Alright, and then just to kind of make sure that it's even more level, I kind of give it a little tap. You don't want to tap it too hard because you don't want to get rid of all the air bubbles you just put in there. So give it a little shake, and that'll just kind of make sure that it's distributed and there aren't too many peaks and valleys. It's not going to matter because the top isn't what's going to show anyway. We're going to flip this whole cake over, and then the bottom is what's going to actually show. But just so you have a nice sort of level bottom, you just kind of want to make sure it's not too much on one side. Alright, so now we just take this, we throw it into a 350-degree oven for 45 to 55 minutes, depending on your oven. You probably want to check it at 45 minutes, just stick a toothpick in about halfway down. If you get like a lot of sort of wet mixture, throw it back in for, if you're really worried about it, just check it every 5 minutes. But if it's really wet, you can probably wait the extra 10 minutes. 55 minutes, if you check it and it's still just a little wet, maybe give it another minute or two. But you don't want to overbake it. This will continue to cook as it kind of sits in here and cools down. You just want to make sure that there's no, it's just not wet batter. You might get wet crumbs, you might get crumbs. But you just want to make sure that it's not wet batter. So we're going to put this in 350 degree, 45 to 55 minutes, and when we come back, we will show you how to make the frosting for the top. Alright, so our cake is done. It is out of the oven. So now this is the moment of truth. This is all the panic builds up to this one moment, because we don't know if the bottom is just going to stick and we're going to have a ruined cake, or if it's going to come clean. So hopefully we did the prep right and it will just kind of slide out. If not, you may see me cry on camera. We'll keep it on the other camera while I do that. But okay, so let's give this a shot and see what happens. Alright, so this should be loose enough. We should be able to, oh, there it is. Alright. So, Bundt cake looks good. You can see all the edges. Now, we just need to frost this thing. So for the topping, we're just going to make a very simple cream cheese frosting. In the bowl, I have an 8-ounce block of cream cheese at room temperature. So take this out like at least an hour or so before you're going to use it. This is just going to make it a lot easier to whip up. If you try to do this while it's cold, it's not going to break apart. You're going to end up with chunks. and there's nothing worse than a chunky cream cheese frosting. So we're going to whip the cream cheese with just 1 tablespoon of butter. Alright, so you're just going to whip that until it's nice and creamy. You want to just make sure that the butter's all kind of incorporated in. And then we're going to do a method of like back and forth. We're going to add some powdered sugar, and then we're going to add milk. So we're going to start by adding our powdered sugar. So in total we're going to use about 3 cups. So what I'm going to do is I'll do a cup of powdered sugar, about a tablespoon of milk, and I'll do a cup of powdered sugar, a tablespoon of milk, and then one last time. That looks pretty good. You want it, so it's not so thick that you have to spread it. You want it to be able to drizzle, but you don't want it to drizzle so much that it all kind of falls off the side of the cake. So that's looking pretty good. So we'll finish this up here. You want it to be kind of like what we would call the ribbon effect, where when it comes off, it doesn't pour off like water, but it doesn't stick to the spoon in one giant clump. And this is just going to help you spill it over your bundt cake a little easier. Now, if you decided not to make a bundt cake and you just wanted to make a regular baking dish, 13 by 9, you would want to add a little bit more sugar to this to thicken it up. You don't want frosting this runny on a flat cake. So you probably want to add another cup of powdered sugar, and maybe 1 or 2 more teaspoons of milk, and you just until you kind of get that consistency of a regular frosting. But we want this to be sort of in between a glaze and a frosting. We don't want it to be so thin that it's like just glazing it, but we don't want it to where it won't spread over the cake itself. So we call it kind of a ribbon, and it should just flow. And you should probably just want to spend hours just watching it, but we won't, because we don't have hours. Alright, so let's get this cake frosted. And there you have it. It's a pumpkin spice bundt cake. It's with a cream cheese frosting. Normally you'd want to let this set for 10-15 minutes, let the frosting set a little bit. I'm going to do that with the rest of the cake, but I'm going to try a piece right now because it looks and smells really good. So, I don't know, we'll just find a piece. Nice and moist, it smells terrific, and I'm sure it's going to taste great. That's all I have for now. I hope you try this, and I hope you have enjoyed Cook's Corner for this session, and look for more recipes this summer for our summer reading program.